you're just helpless. You're like an animal. You're like an animal getting gunned down. It's terrible. No one ever really anticipates that some stranger's gonna come up and shoot you.
For decades, the shadowy enigma of the Zodiac Killer haunted the annals of American crime history, a ghostly presence that taunted law enforcement, teased the public, and evaded justice with unnerving finesse. His cryptic letters, laced with chilling bravado and intricate ciphers, were mailed to newspapers and police departments between the late 1960s and early 1970s. Each note left more questions than answers. The killer claimed responsibility for multiple murders across Northern California, yet his true identity remained a mystery until now. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. In a shocking revelation that stunned both veteran investigators and armchair sleuths alike, the Zodiac Killer's identity has finally been unmasked, thanks to a breakthrough that bridges decades of forensics, linguistic analysis, and digital sleuthing. After years of dead ends, speculative theories, and near misses, the case has at last reached its long elusive resolution. The unraveling of this notorious case didn't come with dramatic arrests or confessions, but through meticulous and painstaking research that combined old-school detective legwork with modern technologies unavailable during the original investigation. The breakthrough came not from a single eureka moment, but from a series of small victories, the most pivotal of which was a previously overlooked piece of evidence, a scrap of DNA embedded beneath the flap of one of the Zodiac's taunting letters. It had long been assumed that contamination and degradation would render the biological material unusable. However, advances in DNA recovery and sequencing technology allowed forensic experts to extract a partial but telling profile. This genetic signature became the cornerstone of a renewed effort to identify the killer. Parallel to the biological trail, cryptanalysts and linguistic experts revisited the Zodiac's infamous ciphers, including the once impenetrable 340-character cipher that had defied decryption for over 5 decades. What was long dismissed as gibberish turned out to be an intricate linguistic maze. Utilizing artificial intelligence and massive language databases, a team of researchers finally cracked the code, revealing a chilling confession that aligned with several known crime scenes and time frames. The message was not just a boast. It contained details only the real killer could have known, effectively silencing decades of impersonators and false leads. The DNA evidence, now matched to a previously unknown suspect, connected a man who had flown under the radar for years, a person never considered a viable suspect during the original investigation. He had no criminal record, lived a seemingly mundane life, and had passed away several years prior, leaving behind a legacy of horror cloaked in suburban normalcy. Yet, as investigators dug into his past, a pattern of disturbing behaviors began to emerge. From strange disappearances of animals in his neighborhood as a child to obsessive writings found in his journals, the puzzle pieces aligned with unsettling precision. The confirmation of his identity brought closure to an era marked by fear, confusion, and media frenzy. But beyond the satisfaction of solving a historical riddle lay the deeper implications of what this means for criminal investigations as a whole. The Zodiac case, long considered a symbol of the limitations of law enforcement, now stands as a testament to the power of perseverance and evolving technology. It marks a turning point in how cold cases might be approached moving forward, not through brute force or mere intuition, but through the integration of science, computation, and long-form investigation. This unraveling also forces a reevaluation of the suspect pool that had defined public and professional discourse for decades. Many presumed candidates, from disgraced school teachers to troubled veterans, are now definitively exonerated. The weight of suspicion they carried, often bolstered by circumstantial evidence or mere coincidence, is finally lifted. Meanwhile, the actual killer hiding in plain sight serves as a grim reminder of how easily evil can wear the mask of the ordinary. The revelation sheds light on the killer's motivations and inner psyche in a way that previously seemed inaccessible. Through recovered personal writings, the investigators pieced together a profile of a man driven not just by homicidal intent, but by a pathological need for control, recognition, and legacy. He orchestrated fear as much as murder, leveraging media and public fascination to elevate himself into myth. His satisfaction was not only in killing, but in being discussed, debated, and dissected across generations. The Zodiac was not merely a murderer, he was a performance artist of death, crafting his crimes as messages and his identity as a cipher. The case's resolution also challenges the culture that had developed around it, a peculiar blend of horror, curiosity, and entertainment. Over the years, the Zodiac Killer became a character in films, novels, documentaries, and online forums, a pop culture entity almost divorced from his real victims and real crimes. Now, with the mask torn away, the humanity of those who suffered finally returns to the center of the narrative. Their names, once overshadowed by the killer's infamy, are being re-embraced as the heart of this tragedy. What's perhaps most unsettling is how close the truth had been all along. The killer had interacted with law enforcement during the original investigation, not as a suspect, but in casual conversations during community events and neighborhood patrols. He even visited some of the very locations he referenced in his letters years after the killings had ceased. He was not a ghost, nor a phantom vanishing into the fog. He was real and he was near. The oversight was not due to incompetence, but to the overwhelming number of leads, the social norms of the time, and the limitations of pre-digital policing. This final unraveling also forces a new conversation about the intersection of fame and crime. The Zodiac was one of the first American serial killers to manipulate mass media as a stage for his ego. His handwritten notes, demands for front-page placement, and boastful clues weren't just about evasion, they were about domination. He wanted to control the narrative, to seed paranoia, to construct a legend that would last longer than any manhunt, and for a time, he succeeded. The closure of the Zodiac case doesn't just punctuate a long unsolved mystery, it rewrites it. It gives new context to the fear that gripped San Francisco and surrounding areas during those chaotic years. It deepens the tragedy of each victim, now reconnected to a face and a name. It challenges the perception of the serial killer as an unknowable beast, instead portraying him as a disturbingly ordinary man who exploited societal blind spots. This revelation also redefines the capabilities of modern investigative science. It highlights how genealogical DNA tracing, long used to reconnect lost families, is now a powerful weapon in the arsenal of justice. The meticulous reconstruction of family trees from public databases, cross-referenced with census records and death certificates, slowly tightened the noose until only one viable candidate remained. It was methodical, clinical, and devastatingly effective. Meanwhile, the deciphered ciphers open a new window into the psychology of a man who prided himself on being unreadable. Far from the linguistic genius many assumed, his messages reveal an insecure man, obsessed with legacy, validation, and perceived superiority. His use of symbols and codes was less about sophistication and more about creating an illusion of mystery, a smokescreen of cleverness that hid a core of cowardice. His crimes, committed in the shadows, were his way of proving a dominance he never felt in life. The solving of the Zodiac mystery also serves as a landmark event for the victims' families, many of whom spent decades living in the long, dark wake of unanswered questions. Their stories, often sidelined by the spectacle of the killer, are now given new voice and validation. The knowledge of the killer's name, his face, and his life brings a strange form of justice, not through the courts, but through certainty. For criminal profilers and law enforcement agencies worldwide, the Zodiac case now becomes a textbook study in both the flaws and the evolution of investigative techniques. It serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly a case can grow cold, and how easily the truth can be lost in the fog of incomplete data, public frenzy, and bureaucratic delay. But it also proves that no case is ever truly beyond resolution if the pursuit of truth is relentless. There's also an eerie irony in the timing. The case was solved not in the immediate wake of its crimes, when emotions ran high and resources were stretched thin, but in a calmer, quieter era, where time allowed for detachment, patience, and deep analysis. The killer, long dead, may never face trial, but he cannot escape exposure. His control over the narrative, so meticulously maintained for years, is now shattered. The Zodiac Killer once wrote that he would never be caught, that he would remain an unsolved cipher for all eternity. That claim has now been disproven. The mystery that cast a shadow across half a century has been stripped bare. The monster has been named, And with that naming comes the power to dispel the myths, the fears, and the twisted aura of genius that once surrounded him. With the truth now revealed, the case transforms from an active horror story into a historical artifact. A story with a beginning, a middle, and finally, an end. It can no longer be fed by speculation, false leads, or hoaxes. Its conclusions are no longer based on guesswork, but on evidence, on science, on truth, and on the dogged persistence of those who refuse to let it go. The world may never be entirely free from the darkness the Zodiac left behind, but it now possesses something just as powerful: clarity. And in the realm of unresolved crimes, clarity is a rare and priceless victory. In the wake of the Zodiac Killer's unmasking, a quiet but seismic shift is rippling through both law enforcement and public consciousness. As the dust begins to settle, what emerges is not just the resolution of a mystery, but the revelation of a new set of truths that had been buried beneath decades of fear, obsession, and misinformation. The solving of this infamous case doesn't simply draw a line under a dark chapter in American criminal history. It reveals layers of complexity that had previously gone unnoticed and prompts a fresh reckoning with the mechanisms of both investigation and myth-making. A surprising element of the case's resolution was the killer's ability to live an unremarkable life after the crimes. For over 50 years, he navigated the world like anyone else, holding jobs, maintaining social relationships, and appearing in no way out of the ordinary. This underscores one of the most chilling aspects of the Zodiac mystery: the banality of evil. The mythos around the killer had built him up as a larger-than-life villain, calculating, elusive, perhaps even supernaturally clever. But the truth, as it turns out, is much more disconcerting. The Zodiac was not a mastermind dwelling in the margins of society. He was among us, blending into the background, confident in the belief that he'd never be found. This realization not only reshapes our understanding of this particular killer, but also challenges our assumptions about crime and detection. The archetype of the deranged loner or the flamboyant sociopath fails to encapsulate the man who orchestrated one of the most notorious killing sprees in modern history. The real Zodiac was meticulous but not infallible, manipulative but not immune to oversight. He exploited the weaknesses in systems that were not yet capable of seeing him for what he was: a calculated predator with an eye for control and chaos. One of the more unexpected revelations was the volume of artifacts he left behind. Writings, photographs, and drawings that for years had been stored in boxes, thought irrelevant or disconnected. Only through fresh eyes and advanced cataloging software did investigators manage to connect these relics to the case. Among them were disturbing pieces of creative writing that paralleled specific details of unsolved murders, as well as unsettling self-portraits that depicted hooded figures not unlike the infamous costume he wore during the Lake Berryessa attack. These items, long dismissed as unimportant or eccentric, turned out to be confessions in disguise, hidden in plain sight. What has also come into focus is the Zodiac's acute understanding of public psychology. He knew, even in the pre-digital age, how to manipulate narratives. He understood how headlines could amplify terror, how carefully chosen words could inspire obsession. His use of symbols, ciphers, and riddles wasn't just to mask his identity, it was to stoke a sense of mythic dread. Every letter he sent was a performance, a carefully scripted piece of theater. He anticipated the reactions they would provoke and thrived on the attention they received. This gives him a strange, almost prophetic connection to the digital age, where visibility and control over narrative are as potent as any weapon. In studying the killer's post-crime behavior, analysts found no indication of guilt or moral reckoning. He didn't descend into paranoia or self-destruction. On the contrary, he appeared to thrive. He kept souvenirs from his crimes and even revisited several scenes, sometimes photographing them years later. These actions were not random. They were expressions of power. In his mind, he hadn't just gotten away with murder, he had outsmarted the system. That perception, more than anything, seemed to feed his ego in the years that followed. Beyond the forensic and psychological revelations lies another, equally significant dimension: the cultural impact of finally solving a mystery that had captured global imagination. Entire generations grew up with the Zodiac Killer as a symbol of unsolved horror. His presence lurked in documentaries, conspiracy theories, and fictional adaptations. For many, he represented the ultimate villain, not just because of the violence he inflicted, but because he symbolized the unknowable. That aura of mystery made him seem untouchable, even immortal. The shattering of that illusion forces a reassessment of how society processes and consumes true crime. The resolution has also exposed the intense competition and fragmentation that plagued the original investigation. Multiple jurisdictions, differing protocols, and lack of communication meant that vital evidence was scattered, sometimes ignored, and often misfiled. The lack of centralized databases in the 1960s and 1970s was a critical disadvantage. Had today's systems been in place back then, it's likely the Zodiac would have been apprehended within years. This realization has already led to renewed calls for more integrated national law enforcement networks, emphasizing collaboration over territorialism. There is a profound lesson here about the role of private citizens in long-term investigations. Amateur sleuths, codebreakers, genealogists, and data analysts played crucial roles in pushing the case forward when official efforts had slowed. While some theories were outlandish or counterproductive, others led to real breakthroughs. The collaboration between public agencies and private individuals is no longer taboo. It's becoming a powerful model for solving the unsolvable. Crowdsourced intelligence, when properly curated and guided, can uncover patterns that institutional thinking sometimes overlooks. Interestingly, this shift has sparked a wave of reinvestigation into other cold cases that were once deemed beyond resolution. Encouraged by the success in the Zodiac investigation, law enforcement agencies are turning their attention to other decades-old mysteries, applying the same techniques in DNA forensics, linguistic analysis, and digital reconstruction. It's as if solving the Zodiac case broke a psychological barrier, proving that time doesn't erase truth, it only hides it more cleverly. Forensic genealogy in particular has emerged as a game changer. The use of public DNA databases, initially intended for personal ancestry exploration, has evolved into a formidable tool for criminal justice. Ethical questions remain, of course, about privacy and consent, but when used judiciously, this method can close cases that have resisted all other efforts. In the Zodiac's case, it was the final piece of the puzzle, the one avenue he never could have anticipated when he mailed those taunting letters decades ago. The psychological impact on those who have studied the case is also noteworthy. Detectives, journalists, and researchers who devoted years, some entire careers, to tracking the Zodiac now find themselves grappling with a strange form of closure. The pursuit, which had defined so much of their professional and emotional lives, has ended. Some describe it as a relief. Others feel a sense of loss, as if a part of their identity was tied to the ongoing search. But for all, the finality offers something precious: peace. Not just for the victims' families, but for everyone who had been consumed by the chase. The implications of this case's conclusion also extend into the domain of education. Criminology programs are already incorporating the Zodiac investigation into curricula, not just as a case study of criminal behavior, but as a comprehensive look at investigative evolution. It teaches the dangers of tunnel vision, the importance of interagency cooperation, and the value of persistence. Future generations of detectives will study the Zodiac not just for what he did, but for what his case revealed about the justice system, both its flaws and its resilience. It's worth reflecting on how different this outcome could have been if any number of small decisions had gone differently, if a single fingerprint had been collected more carefully, if an early cipher had been cracked decades earlier, if the public had recognized the killer from a sketch. History pivoted on these missed opportunities, but now, with the clarity of hindsight, each of those missteps adds weight to the triumph of finally reaching the truth. The families of the victims, long pushed into the margins of public attention, are now reclaiming their stories. The Zodiac's final defeat isn't just in being named, it's in being overshadowed. No longer the centerpiece of the tale, he has been demoted from myth to man. The spotlight returns to those he silenced, giving their names permanence and visibility. The human cost of this saga, so often lost in the pursuit of intrigue, is now front and center. In the aftermath of the identification, communities where the murders took place have also begun to heal in unexpected ways. Memorials are being revisited, local histories rewritten to reflect the new reality. A collective sigh, decades in the making, is finally being exhaled. There's a power in knowing, even if the knowledge is dark. It allows for rebuilding, for reconciling with the past, for finally letting go of unanswered questions. Even the media, long complicit in amplifying the killer's mystique, is shifting tone. The focus has turned from spectacle to substance, from who the Zodiac was to what the resolution means. Discussions are now centered around policy, science, and ethics, rather than sensationalism. It marks a maturation of the true crime genre, a move away from voyeurism and toward constructive discourse. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the Zodiac Killer mystery finally being solved? Who is it? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.